Thank you for the introduction. Yes, I'm Kirstyn Everson Nair. I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. My job is doing assessments, diagnosis, medication management, and therapy with different clients. And then my husband, Vinod Nair, I'll let you do a quick introduction.
Hi, I'm Vinod. You can call me Vin. I'll introduce myself properly when it comes to my
Okay.
section. Right now, she's the brains. I'm just here for the good looks.
So first of all, we just want to first acknowledge all of you and thank you for the work that you do. I know it's a lot behind the scenes to keep our community safe, and that it's a really fast-paced and high-risk position, and I'm sure that takes a toll on your mental health. And we just want to be here today to kind of offer something small back to you to kind of optimize well-being. So we're going to start by talking about stress. And stress often gets a really kind of bad reputation, but it's not something that's inherently negative. This is something called the Yerkes-Dodson law. And it talks about how there's really an optimal level of stress. So you can see it on this bell-shaped curve. When we have this optimal level of stress, it's really there where we feel we're kind of on our growth edge. It's a place of learning, growth, really a peak performance. When our stress is on the low side, when it's too low, we're often bored, understimulated, really in our comfort zone. And then when the stress is too high, kind of on the other side of the curve, that's when we can experience things like fear, panic, burnout, overwhelm. But again, at that optimal level, it's really positive. We feel more engaged, more focused, and really challenged to perform at our best. Um, my husband has done a lot of training on stress management, and I'm going to let him speak to this a little as well, which I affectionately call the Bin's Law. Go ahead.
Okay. Stress on its own is not a negative word, though we use it negatively all the time. Stress is a neutral word. There's two kinds, there's eustress and there's distress. The simple way to understand it is if you take a weighing scale and on one side you put the demands on you, intellectual, physical, emotional demands on you, and the other side is your ability to cope. Initially, if they're both the same, then it's okay. A little more demands than you can handle, you start getting challenged. But this is exciting challenge because you're up to it. That's the eustress zone where you're still excited, you're in optimal side. And then as the demands increase and it goes way beyond your capacity, then you go into the distress zone, which is not good. It's the same the other way around. If the demands on you are less and your ability is more, initially it's good, it's exciting. You can do this easily, right? So it's all eustress. But the minute the demands are too little and your ability is not challenged at all, then it again goes into the distress zone. So there's a thin bandwidth called the eustress zone, and after that starts distress on both sides.
Yep. Yeah. From our understanding of the work you do, I think we don't really need to touch on the too low of stress, is our understanding. So we're really going to focus more on the other side where the demands and the pressure is much more constant. And we want to talk about what happens when stress becomes overwhelming, the signs that mental health might be starting to decline, and when burnout is setting in. And we want to talk about some practical ways to manage that stress and look at what we can do if the stress just becomes beyond what we can manage by ourselves. When stress isn't inherently the problem, what it comes down to, it's the lack of recovery from stress. This is really what we want to focus on is how we can get that recovery in. In the wild, we see that animals go through really intense life-threatening stressors. And so they'll get attacked. And, when they survive, what will happen is you'll see them do like a real shake. They might let out a loud sound. They'll go into really deep stomach breathing, belly breathing. And this is their way of discharging the stress from what they've just endured. And it's really the nervous system resetting, which is completing the stress cycle and helping them return to baseline. However, for us as humans, we experience stress quite differently. Our stress is much more ongoing, it's chronic. It's things like deadlines, responsibilities, pressure. And oftentimes, instead of doing something to discharge that stress, we carry it with us, we suppress it, we just kind of move on to the next task without fully coming back down. And over time, it's like pressure building in the system without having that release valve. So that's when we start to see the impact on our mental health. And some of the early signs of worsening mental health, we can see that we feel a little bit more irritable, a little bit more emotionally reactive. We might snap a little bit more. We can feel really fatigued even when we've had adequate rest, difficulty concentrating, changes in sleep or appetite, and that can go one way or the other, oversleeping or not being able to sleep, overeating or not being able to eat, oftentimes withdrawing from others, and then just feeling less enjoyment in the things that we typically engage in as hobbies. And then the signs of burnout, kind of the key element of this is just no longer caring. Kind of, it doesn't matter how well I do, don't really care about, my coworkers or the people I'm working for, anything like that. We just feel detached, we feel cynical, full physical, mental exhaustion. Oftentimes, we kind of stop showing up, greater absenteeism. We might use substances to cope. And really, at kind of our worst, it can feel like the urge to take our own life. So, I want to talk about kind of what's happening under the surface when we're experiencing stress. So, what you can see here is the brain. So, there's the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex are the main things that we'll talk about. So the amygdala is really the emotional brain. It's the threat detector, and it's meant to be there for us to identify stresses in our environment or identify threats in our environment. And when we have this stress, it becomes highly activated, and it signals other parts of the brain to initiate the stress response. And this activates the sympathetic nervous system. Downstream leads to release of adrenaline, cortisol. We feel our heart rate go up, blood pressure increase. Oftentimes, our breathing becomes faster and shallower, and the body's in this really protective survival mode for either fight, flight, freeze, or even fawn is kind of another one that we talk about. So, under moderate stress, the prefrontal cortex, which is our logical reasoning brain, um, this part that's involved in impulse control, decision making, and emotional regulation, that will come online, and it'll work with our amygdala. It'll help us kind of prioritize, see the severity of the stressor, be able to problem solve, and eventually be able to help us regulate and work through a problem. However, under more intense or prolonged stress, the communication between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala it becomes less efficient, kind of begins to shut down, and the brain really prioritizes survival at that point. So it reduces our ability to think clearly, to regulate emotions, or respond flexibly. So if you think about kind of in these moments when we have this overreaction or shutdown, that's our nervous system operating from this place of survival. So when we're in this place where our amygdala is kind of on fire and our prefrontal cortex is shut down, we need to be able to access that again. And the way that we can do that is not through kind of forcing rational thinking. We first have to really calm the nervous system. And then once the body and emotional brain settle, it can kind of come back online. So, how we do that um, first is being able to recognize what we're feeling, being able to acknowledge that, it's allowing it. So, whether it's feeling nervous, angry, frustrated, whatever it is, we just want to remember that all emotions are just emotions and they all pass, they're all temporary, and being able to acknowledge those first and allow them allows them to dissipate. And the other is really considering the brain body connection. Um, so the brain and body, it's highly connected. And we often think that, the brain is really informing the body um, what to do, but it's really the afferent fibers of the nervous system. It's about 75 to 80% the body speaking to the mind, kind of telling us how to feel. So when we're feeling tense, stressed, it's signaling to our mind that we're not safe, um, that I think that's the main thing, that we're not safe right here. So big part of this is being able to kind of bring calm back into the body. And so the brain can then interpret that we are safe. Um, we don't need to be in this chronically stressed place. And let's see if I'm missing anything. Yeah, so this is a biological mechanism. So for our ancestors, that again, body tension to heightened alertness, it helped them respond quickly to real danger and predators or other threats. And today, the same nervous system pathways activate the same the same pathway to modern stress, even when the situation is not life threatening. So the good news is that we can calm this, right? That works in reverse. When we can calm the body, it then signals the mind that again that we're safe. Okay. So, how do we actually promote mental health in the midst of chronic stress? So, a big part of this is building in intentional recovery practices. Things that we talk about, one is being back in nature, getting to that point where we're out of the constant stimulation that we have currently, the fast pace. This gets us back to some of those natural rhythms. It lowers cortisol levels, reduces sympathetic nervous system activation, decreases heart rate, improves mood and emotional regulation. Exercise, this is actually the number one intervention for depression, beyond medications or anything. It's something that it builds resiliency, strengthening our capacity to move through discomfort. Um, it releases natural endorphins, supports things like serotonin, dopamine, which is that reward chemical, and of course, it just helps us release some built up stress and energy. And I know you guys have been, sounds like a lot of the things you've been doing recently have a lot of exercise, like the biking and what else was there? Yoga, all of these
Today,
pieces.
yeah.
Yeah, the runs. Sleep, it's foundational for mental health, nervous system regulation. It's where our brain and body recover, restore energy, regulate emotions, and process the experiences throughout the day. It helps with memory consolidation. And so the things that we learned throughout the day, it helps us actually hold those and retain those things. Social connection, social support is really vital. It's again, it comes back to some of these neurotransmitters, the oxytocin that's released, having the sense of safety and trust with our support system, breath work and mindfulness. So, breath work, it's again, it's kind of getting us back into our system. It's that slow, intentional breathing, activating the parasympathetic nervous system, helping reduce stress activation. It also helps keep us really present, because anxiety is oftentimes something that we are anticipating in the future, and we end up bringing that suffering into the present moment. And in mindfulness, it can be really present, trusting that we'll be able to meet whatever demand that is when that comes in the future. Volunteering is another huge one that can be really helpful for mental health, something that gets us out of our own way, kind of gets us out of our own bubble. Can be a sense of gratitude. We end up receiving as much as we give, oftentimes, in these situations. And then spiritual practices. So, something that has us connected to something beyond ourself. It could be an anchor, it's something that is, again, gratitude, connection. Um, yeah, can assist through uncertainty and stress. So the other part then is when these things aren't effective or they're not enough, when we could use some professional support. So I want to talk about what that looks like. There's a common misconception that therapy is really just for when we're in crisis, but it can be there for multiple reasons, including prevention. It can help us really gain greater insight into ourselves, build more coping tools, skills. So, what happens in a therapy session? So, the simplest way to think about it is a really structured, supportive conversation that's focused entirely on you. One of the key components from a therapist is called unconditional positive regard. So, it means that anything you bring into the session, that they're approaching that from a place of acceptance, understanding, um, really seeing the best in you. And you can feel completely safe sharing whatever it is that you're bringing to the table. And then through that process, it's exploring thoughts, behaviors, patterns, processing stress, gaining insights into relationships and coping strategies or different patterns, building self awareness, resilience. Let's see, yeah, working toward personal goals, healing, and overall well being. And it's really about getting to a point of thriving at your fullest capacity versus just kind of keeping your head above water. So there's multiple types of therapy, and I think kind of classically people think of more of like a Freudian kind of psychoanalytic therapy. But there's multiple, yeah, components. There's the cognitive behavioral therapy, which we talked about, which is really looking at how our thoughts and thoughts affect feelings, which affect behaviors. Acceptance and commitment therapy. I can go through each of these if you guys are interested. Dialectical, internal family systems, which really looks at kind of our inner child, the different parts of ourselves, the messages we received when we were younger, how we still kind of hold those messages, even if they're inaccurate. Coping strategies that we learned as a kid or somewhere along our way that are no longer helpful to us. Um, Somatic experiencing, it's really, again, kind of getting into the body, recognizing where we hold um, maybe traumas in different ways. And then EMDR, which is the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's primarily used for PTSD. And then there's many others, right? Exposure, solution focused. There can be couples, families, groups. And I forgot to put this on here, but an excellent resource is Psychology Today. So if you're interested in therapy, you can go on, you can filter it through location, through what symptoms or diagnoses, and any type of therapy that you specifically want. It can filter down and you get resources for providers in your area. And yeah, one of the main things is therapeutic rapport is absolutely vital. It's the number one predictor of outcome in therapy. So if you don't feel safe with the person you're talking to, don't feel like you can open up, don't trust their word, that's going to have a big impact. So if it doesn't feel like a good fit, you can always change providers. It's really common and it's important. So it's all about having the right fit for you. And then, yeah, the last part is just crisis support. So if this is, if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's kind of beyond, what we can get through either natural supports or therapy for life threatening, you can call 911 or 988, which is actually the emergency mental health line. And there's a suicide prevention line, BC crisis line. Um, Couple things for kids, the Indigenous Crisis Line, and harm reduction, which is more based for substance use disorders. So those are the pieces, and I'm going to hand it over to my hubby.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to stand here so I can see you. Feel a bit disconnected otherwise. My name is Vinod Nair. You can call me Vin. On the personal front, I am autistic with Asperger's syndrome. I'm a nerd. Love being a dog dad. I have two beautiful dogs and love being husband to Kirstyn. On the professional front, my professional life is now 36 years old. In that time, I've become a veteran, a best selling author, and a high performance coach. I've worked with CEOs, high performance executives, business people, and a few others. Today, we are going to go over the happiness success equation. This part of the session is quite personalized, so it'll be to each and every individual here, because your definition of success is unique to you, and what makes you happy is also unique to you. So it'll be personalized. um, I'll be telling you two stories. We'll be doing a lot of thinking, and then we'll have a free flowing Q&A or a discussion after that. Shall I get started? Yes, let's go. Let's start with an exercise. This is entirely individual. You can write if you like, you can think, you can make notes on your phone, whatever works for you. So, what does success mean to you individually? What is your definition of success? And when will you say that I am successful? Not me, you. Okay, when will you say that you are a successful person? Just think about it for a moment and then we'll go forward. It's, of course, unique to you, and we are not going to share yet. We're going to do some thinking. So, for this, please close your eyes. Please close your eyes and let's get our baggage off. So, take a deep breath. Please inhale, exhale. Two more, okay? Inhale, exhale. One last one. Inhale, exhale. Keep your eyes closed. No need to open them yet. And here's a question for you with your eyes closed. I'd like you to visualize and go back to a time when you felt really happy. So just visualize a time when you were really happy. Relive that moment and consider what makes you happy. What does happiness mean to you? Thank you. You can open your eyes now. Okay, and now we come to a question. The question is your definition of happiness tied in some way to your definition of success? Many of us say, I'll be happy when I get that promotion, or I get that house, or I buy that new car. Society and life today has very subtly programmed us to tie our happiness to success at different levels. Some examples will be, I'll be happy when I make more money. I'll be happy when I become successful, or I'll be happy when I'm recognized or I get praise from others. I'll be happy when I achieve my goals, or I'll be happy when I arrive. This is quite common. There's some downsides to thinking like that. But before we get into that, I've got to tell you about Maggie May. This is story one out of story two. Maggie May moved to Canada when she was really young with her parents. So her parents managed to put her in a school, but her parents struggled to adjust and fit into Canadian life. They had financial challenges, they had social challenges, they had customary challenges. So Maggie May, throughout her childhood, always received less than. The clothes she got were less than what her classmates got. The quality or the number of toys and other things she had were always less than. So she grew up with a lot of inadequacy. And one of the things she resolved for herself was that when she has a child, she will give her child abundance. Okay? So she did grow up and she did have a child. She had a daughter, but she was a single parent. And she made this resolution to herself saying that she will provide more to her daughter. She will make sure her daughter doesn't grow up with scarcity. But being a single parent, that meant she had to work extra hard. So She put in the hours, she did the work, she pushed herself to maximum. She made sure that her daughter always had the best of clothes, the best of facilities, the best of toys, the best of everything. Her daughter grew up in abundance. But the red flag started to pop as her daughter arrived into her teens. Maggie May would get calls from the school saying, "We have this problem, we have that problem." And finally, she was called in by the counselors. And at that meeting, she was told by the counselor that we've sat with your daughter and your daughter is missing school. She's not doing well in her studies and she's getting into some addictions, some smoking, some weed, some alcohol. She's falling off by the side. So we had a few counseling sessions with your daughter. And what we've arrived at as the core of the problem is that she's missing you as her parent. She feels neglected. She feels that you just don't care. Now, this hit Maggie pretty badly because what she was doing was exactly the opposite. She was putting in the hours because she was a dedicated parent. But the result was the reverse. This can happen to any of us. It's a common story. So we got to think of a question. Does success bring happiness or can happiness bring success? It's something each of us needs to think about individually. So going by our regular programming, success should bring happiness. I'll be happy when I do this, right? But when chasing success first, what happens is happiness gets postponed. Identity becomes tied to success. Self worth fluctuates with wins and losses. And the result can be anxiety, burnout, emptiness, comparison to others or the people around us, constant moving of goalposts. You achieve one milestone, you're like, okay, what's next? Right? So let's try the other way around. First of all, let's look at success. There's two kinds of success. There's internal success and there's external success. Most of us look at external success and we chase that and tie it to our happiness. External success is money, career, status, achievements, recognition. Internal success, which is just as important, is peace, health, character, relationships, purpose, and self respect. Somehow, these sometimes they just fall by on the side in our journey. Remember that the journey is as important as the destination. Our eyes are usually on the destination. I want that promotion. I want that bump in my pay. But the journey is just as important. Happiness is a choice. You can just choose to be happy and to live a happier life. It's not as simple as that. You don't just say, I'm going to be happy and then you're happy. There's a little more to it. And how to be happy is made easier by giving your life purpose and meaning, inner alignment between your thoughts, your words, and your actions, alignment between what you want to do in the long term and what you're doing right now. Emotional regulation. Many of us are victims of our emotion. I feel, so I just feel. But we can regulate our emotions. We can take responsibility for them. Cultivating an attitude of gratitude, being able to appreciate all that we are and all that we have on a daily micro level basis, super important. Cultivating and nurturing healthy relationships, peace with oneself. If we can look at these points, then being happier on a day to day basis is much easier. It's much more attainable. Happy people enjoy the journey of life. Okay? Happy people think more clearly, sustain efforts longer, communicate better, recover faster from setbacks, and make wiser decisions. So, happiness is important even in our success journey. But note, happiness does not mean constant pleasure. It's not like you're high all the time, right? Even a happy life contains challenges, goals, struggle, discipline, sacrifice, grief, uncertainty, and responsibility. So you can have all of these and still cultivate and nurture a happy, fulfilled life. High performers often discover that fulfillment is not just found in outcomes or achievements, but it's also in having a purpose, being challenged, process, the actual work that you're doing, craftsmanship, contribution, giving, helping, and growing. There's a lot of happiness in all of these also. And it's up to us individually to find our happiness in each of these. Now, if you notice, even previously I'd used the word purpose and it's popped up here again. So, what do we mean by purpose? And why is purpose so important? Without purpose, life can be fragmented, reactive, driven by circumstance and short term opportunities rather than intention. So, what is purpose? Purpose is a higher calling, something beyond ourself and just accumulating things. It's a reason why. It's a larger reason why. Okay, usually it's altruistic. We look beyond ourselves. And how do you arrive at, or rather, what's the difference between purpose and goals? Your purpose is larger. It is something for which you were born. It's a calling. Whereas goals are what you achieve on your journey to your purpose. Okay? Goals are milestones that we need to cross in our journey in achieving our purpose. I'll give you some examples. Here's one example. Your purpose is to provide the best opportunities and environment to your children and your family. Goals would be drop bad habits, make more money, be a better parent and partner. Here's another example. Purpose is to elevate the lives of the poor somewhere. Goals create awareness, generate sponsorships, bring in accountability. So there's a difference between your purpose and your goals. Your goals are milestones. How do you find your purpose? Some of us just know from a young age, this is my purpose. This is what I'm going to do. And some of us, like me, can't figure out our purpose for a while. So if you're in the second category, then purpose may emerge gradually through reflection, through experience, and engagement with the world. It slowly becomes clear, oh, this is what I was meant to do. This is my calling. This is what fulfills me or nourishes my soul. People discover purpose by paying attention to what deeply moves them, what problems they feel called to address, and what kind of legacy they wish to leave behind. So please do give it a thought. Think about what is your purpose? What is your larger calling? Why is it so important? There are many, many benefits to having purpose. Let's take a look at them. So, purpose functions as an internal compass. It helps make decisions aligned with values rather than being swayed by short term opportunities, impulses, or external pressures. Challenges, setbacks, sacrifices are easier to endure when you know why you're going through it. Fosters a sense of responsibility and contribution, reminding us that our lives can influence and uplift others. More benefits, greater motivation, persistence, and satisfaction, even through hard times. Purpose organizes energy, prioritizes what matters, and avoids us from becoming scattered by distractions. It transforms existence from mere survival into a meaningful participation, giving both direction to our efforts and depth to our lives. Are you with me so far? Yes? Okay. So we spoke about purpose, we spoke about goals. Let me come to story number two. This is again someone I knew years ago when I was conducting training programs. This is in the late 90s or early 2000s back in India. So I used to conduct programs for a lot of tech companies. And in one such tech company, there was the HR guy whose name was Neil. Neil was a young, smart person. And he and I became friends. We used to catch lunch during the breaks. We used to meet up sometimes in the evenings. And we got along really great. Neil was a young guy who had a clear purpose in his life. And his purpose was, as the HR guy in that company, he wanted to help others tap their full potential. And he had his goals really, really clearly laid out. He knew exactly what he had to do. People loved him, he was competent, and he was doing well. Neil also had a long term goal, which was clear in his head from a young age. Neil wanted to migrate to the US. Very, very clear. The company he was working in when I met him, he was already there, I think, for 6 or 7 years. And the company had put him in the US for, I think, about 2.5, 3 years previously. During that time when he was there, he applied for his green card. His tenure got over, and now he was back in India. He used to live with his parents. His parents were fairly aged because they had had him very late in life. His dad was more or less bedridden, and his mom used to take care of his dad. One day, I was doing a program, and Neil came through the glass door exactly like this. And I saw him outside, and he was doing yay, yay, yay. So I caught him in the lunch break, and he opened this envelope and he showed me the first time I saw a green card. He said, "My green card's come. I'm going to the US." And he was so happy. It was infectious. I was happy for him, really happy. So I think it was barely a month or so, and he was off. We all went to see him off at the airport. He said bye to us, and he took off. Landed in the US, got into his job, was doing well. Back home, his father fell ill. His father was already bedridden, but his health took a turn for the worse. He landed up in hospital, and within a week, his father passed away. I don't know what the green card rules are now, but back then, if you moved into the US for a green card, you couldn't leave immediately for some time. So he was stuck, and he couldn't come back for his father's funeral. That broke his heart. It was terrible. He had this spiral of downward. And within a month, his mother also passed away. And he still couldn't come back. So, this, if the earlier one broke his heart, this one broke him fully. Neil just spun out. He went into depression. He turned suicidal. He overdosed on some sleeping pills. Pretty soon fell by the side and lost his job, couldn't keep himself together, was in therapy and on SSRIs for a long time. I think it took 2 or 3 years before he could get his life back on track. Now, if you think about Neil, what did he do wrong? He had his purpose very clear, he had his goals very clear. So, what was the mistake he made? The mistake he made was, there was a clue in the previous slide, was he did not know his values very clearly. The values are vital for each and every one of us. We all have values. We just don't take the time to sit and write them down or list them out. So it's an important exercise for us to do. Values are the core principles and standards that guide how a person thinks, behaves, makes decisions, and relates to others. They act like an internal compass that shapes priorities, choices, and identity. Okay. Your values you have your purpose, you have your goals. Your values will tell you how to achieve that purpose and how to get to the goals. Mm. Values provide clarity and direction. Values create consistency in characters, support stability and self respect, essential for leadership and high performance, and their moral compass. So, for Neil, one of his values, a high value, was being available for his parents. He knew it in the back of his head, but he had never written it down. And the route to his goals and his purpose trampled on his values, which is what sent him spinning out of control. So it's very important for us to know our values, and values are unique to each and every single one of us. What I value may not be the same as what you value. That doesn't make the other person lesser than or greater than. We just have our own values. Coming to our final exercise activity, you can write this down, you can think about it, and once you've done that, we'll open up for a free Q&A between all of us. Okay? So the final exercise is list out your purpose in life, your larger purpose. Then list out your values. Very, very important. And then list out your goals. This is the right order in which to do it. Many of us just have our goals and we don't bother with our purpose or with our values. And while chasing our goals, we wind up being distracted by short term opportunities. So, a simple way to visualize this is if you take a graph, okay, a chart, a person who starts at the base and knows where he or she wants to go will find opportunities and goals that take them to the larger purpose. So even if you get slightly sidetracked here and there, you're still going towards the larger purpose. A person who is not clearly listed out their purpose and their values will go to the nearest hot looking opportunity. So your graph might end up looking like this and not really going anywhere. So by the time you reach a certain age, you're like, oh my God, I've done well, but I've achieved nothing. So it helps if we have that sense of direction. So in conclusion, I'd say get to know your purpose, list out your values, and then list out your goals and everything else that Wifey said. All equally important. Okay. Thank you very much.